Good afternoon, I'm Anthony Lugg with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Investigators have identified a possible motive for yesterday's fatal shooting of 51-year-old Andrea Lowe Garwood at the Agape Christian Fellowship Church in Falmouth, Trelawney. Head of the Area 1 Police Headquarters, Assistant Commissioner Clifford Chambers, last night told our news center that the incident appears to have been a contract killing.
The motive appears to be domestic, as it is right now, which has an extension with a contract, if you will.
It was reported that about 10:30, Mrs. Lowe Garwood was praying when a man seated behind her pulled an illegal gun and opened fire. Mrs. Lowe Garwood was shot several times at close range. The shooter escaped in a car. 3 persons were later detained. ACP Chambers told our news center that 2 of them will remain in custody. He also revealed that the getaway vehicle was rented.
And the person and our institution from whom it was rented is also in close relationship with the police at this stage, as we're trying to establish exactly who the renter of the vehicle is. So based on the leads which are being followed now and present operational activities which are entrained by the police, we are confident that within the next 24 hours we will get in custody those persons who are involved in this crime.
Meanwhile, shock and outrage continues to be expressed about the brazenness of the killing of a woman in a church in Falmouth, Trelawney. It has led to calls for plans to be put in motion regarding the Memorandum of Understanding on the National Consensus of Crime, which was signed last year. O'Shane Masters reports.
President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ Keith Duncan, says it's time for stakeholders to stop bickering about crime and agree on a way forward. His comments come during Radio Jamaica's That's a Wrap yesterday. Mr. Duncan said it would require all Jamaicans to be on board with a plan if the violence is to end.
This is where we need to get together as a country, all of us, the government, opposition, communities, non-governmental organizations, private sector, civil society. We all need to get together and agree on the way forward. We have our crime monitoring oversight committee that was put in place, that was signed off between all stakeholders, the government, the opposition, around a framework for our crime strategy and all the initiatives that are to drive it. We really need all of Jamaica on board. We cannot take the bickering around a plan. We need to be all on board with the plan.
Last August, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, then opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips, and members of the private sector signed a Memorandum of Understanding on the National Consensus on Crime. The signing was a public commitment to work together to tackle criminal activities in Jamaica. Meanwhile, in reacting to the murder at the Agape Christian Fellowship, President of the Jamaica Association of Evangelicals, Dr. Peter Garth, has expressed alarm. He says the shooting is a worrying sign of the extent to which criminals will go to carry out deadly attacks.
It was a very frightening, staggering, and unbelievable act. And if what we are hearing is so, that the person was unmasked, it says something that the level of crime in this country has reached below the bottom of the barrel. And I believe that those who were there have been seriously traumatized. But beyond what took place today, I maintain that it happened in a church and that is unprecedented.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Communications Officer at the JCF, Senior Superintendent Stephanie Lindsay, says the crime statistics up to January 31 show that there were 3 more murders committed to that of the corresponding period in 2020. However, she says most of the murders are between 4 rival gangs. These gangs are located in Kingston Western, Central, and Eastern Police Divisions. It's why National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says a new operational plan will be rolled out for the West and Central Kingston Police Divisions to reduce crime. The minister said the Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson was in the area on Sunday where he was updated on the strategy.
In fact, they have already apprehended at least one of the miscreants with a firearm. So we'll get them, but it's It's of concern, I said, that we continue to view the activity of these brutal criminals that is a normal variant of crime. It is a situation that deserves extraordinary measures, and we'll have to examine how that can be done.
The police say it has become harder to deal with gang-related crimes as the matter has moved beyond communities and are happening now just about anywhere. Political representatives in sections of Manchester where the highway extension work has been stalled because of protests are touting last Wednesday's meeting with the highway developers a success. However, despite this view, it's still not clear when work will resume. Herman Green reports.
Extension work for the South Coast Highway from Mineral Heights in Clarendon through Porus, Redberry and other communities to Williamsfield in Manchester stopped on Monday. Residents protested as they say several issues raised last year have not been addressed and they are severely impacted. In light of the protests, a high-level meeting with NROC, Contractors China Harbour Engineering Company, CHEC, and political representatives was held on Wednesday. 2 days later, Member of Parliament for Manchester Southern, Robert Chin, gave an update.
As at now, the work has ceased until some tangible deliverables are put in place.
Despite the discontinuation of the highway project, Mr. Chin says the meeting was fruitful as they've come to an agreement on how the issues raised will be handled. Councillor for the Porus Division, Claudia Morant Baker, explained that, firstly, CHEC has agreed to put infrastructure in place to deal with the lack of potable water.
China Harbour is compliant by donating 3 tank bases, 3 1,000-gallon tanks, along with the bases, and will be supplying the commodity to the residents on a weekly basis. That's their verbal commitment so far. My duty is to identify the contractors who will be building the bases. I've been having communication with them already. We are agreeing on costing and everything there, materials costing, etc.
In relation to concerns of flooding based on the project's drainage system, NROC and CHEC have agreed to present a suitable project plan to the municipal corporation to alleviate that threat. The residents had also shown us cracks in their houses, which they say were caused by vibration from drilling and blasting. MP Chin says that and the associated noise pollution were also addressed.
We're looking at the damages to the infrastructure, damages to people's property, with a view to see who is liable for compensation. The issue of noise pollution, that has been addressed. We have very clear direction in which hours of work and days that we work, we are going to stick to those hours.
The agreement is that no work will be done on Sundays and public holidays. So, with the project stalled for now, the first tangible deliverable expected is the water tank and stands, but no completion date was given for that infrastructure. Herman Green, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back. Continuing the news. Another stakeholder from the entertainment industry has added his voice to calls for a quick resumption of the events in the sector. Chief Executive Officer of entertainment company Main Events, Solomon Sharp, warns the country's economy may be adversely affected if the entertainment industry continues to be stalled. Sandy Williams has more.
Last Wednesday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said the government will review proposals submitted by stakeholders regarding the resumption of the entertainment sector. Until then, Mr. Holness noted that the restriction on all events remains in effect. The ban on entertainment events was implemented as part of efforts to limit the spread of COVID-19. But Chief Executive Officer of entertainment company Main Events, Solomon Sharp, says if the ban is not lifted soon, the country's economy may be impacted significantly. It's why he's calling on the government to act swiftly in finding a solution to facilitate the reopening of the industry.
The rest of the world right now is going through their whole vaccine programs. We want to get our vaccine program and we want to be able to gradually rebuild this industry. but we can't wait 9 more months. This industry is going to be wiped out. If this industry is wiped out, our economy stands to get wiped out. And there are other things that we're going to have to worry about then. So I think now is the time. Everybody has waited.
The COVID-19 pandemic has brought the entertainment sector to a halt with travel restrictions and a ban on public gatherings. Since last year, players in the sector have been utilizing social media platforms such as Instagram and Facebook to host events. But these platforms do not provide an avenue for earning, which has put a dent in their livelihoods. Speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica Monday morning, Mr. Sharp insisted there are ways to safely resume events.
The stadium, for argument's sake, can hold 10,000 persons or 30,000 persons, for argument's sake. So let's start at having only 5,000 people there, and we will rebuild. We establish protocols. It's all very easy. You set up wash stations, you set up sanitizers. Anything that happens in the airport, in the supermarket, in all these other safe zones. So it's very easy to set up these safe zones. We just have to come together as a people.
The local government and entertainment ministries are to meet sometime this week to discuss a way forward for the industry. Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
Face-to-face classes at Yallas High School in St. Thomas have been suspended effective today after a student tested positive for COVID-19. All classes will now be held online. Cody and Barrett reports.
Yallas High School was the first school in St. Thomas to return to face-to-face learning back in November last year. This after the Education Ministry signaled some schools would be allowed to be opened on a phased basis. Now, the school is back in lockdown after a student tested positive for COVID-19. Principal of Yallas High, Mark Malabva, says the student who tested positive was last present at the school on January 15.
As a precaution, we have decided to close school, postpone face-to-face classes, so to speak, and move fully online. To allow the incubation period to pass.
According to Mr. Malabva, students are not observing the COVID-19 protocols when they are not at school. It's the reason why he's making this appeal.
Our challenge is when they go out on the road. Students also need to take responsibility for their own safety. And parents also need to encourage the students to take responsibility for their own safety.
He says the school will be deep cleaned and sanitized before classes resume. Cody and Barrett, TVJ News.
Jamaicans will soon be issued with a more sophisticated travel documentation, an e-passport. The Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA, outlined the development of the plan during the final virtual town hall meeting on the National Identification System, NIDS, on Thursday.
Identity fraud prevention was again one of the main factors promoted not only by the NIDS team, but government agencies at Thursday's Joint Select Committee virtual town hall meeting. CEO of PICA, Andrea Winter, again pointed to some 200 persons applying to PICA for passports in fictitious or someone else's name in 2020 alone. While praising NIDS as one more level of security to prevent these occurrences, he also explained that PICA is far advanced in plans to produce and issue e-passports, which will have travel and identification information stored on a chip embedded in the document.
We're currently in discussions with the supplier in terms of looking at putting the infrastructure and everything in place. So we're well advanced. In fact, in March, we will be meeting to have discussion to finally start the rollout, the implementation process.
It's expected that NIDS will help in bolstering the verification and protection of passport information and make applying for a passport with fraudulent information more difficult. In addition to the travel documents, it's understood that several government services are now being overhauled to incorporate NIDS as a verification tool.
It will enhance the security feature around these transactions. So for instance, we currently have a partial online TRN registration. And the reason for that is persons will have to come and physically establish who they are, etc., with probably a passport, birth certificate, to identify themselves for us to process or issue that number. This would, for instance, significantly assist us in doing an full online registration.
Commissioner General at Tax Administration Jamaica, Ainsley Powell, outlined services that will be added to the list to include motor vehicle sales and registration for e-services. This was the final virtual town hall meeting on NIDS. The Joint Select Committee of Parliament will resume sittings on February 11. The public has up to February 15 to make submissions for amendments to be considered in the bill before it is presented to Parliament for debate. Herman Green, TVJ News.
The Firearm Licensing Authority says it will now be accepting all applications and appeals online. The announcement was made at the opening of the newly upgraded technological infrastructure recently. More in this report.
If you're looking to own a firearm, the process to getting one will now be online. According to Chief Executive Officer of the Firearm Licensing Authority, Shane Darling, the initiative is to foster transparency at the FLA. Mr. Darling says a fully automated system will allow applicants to track their application.
The system also sends an email to the applicant each time there's an update on your application. An email is received and you can go online to track the processes. So there's no need to call the FLA or to find anyone to assist you. You go online and the application process from the start to the finish is done online.
As part of a joint venture program between the Ministry of National Security and the Inter-American Development Bank, some $400,000 was pumped into upgrading the infrastructure.
So far, we have acquired a bullet track machine which will be able to test all bullets that have been fired by a licensed firearm. We have received 2 laser engraving machines and also data concentrators to improve the database and the network, the processing time for all our systems. And it must be noted that all ballistic testing of firearms are uploaded immediately to the forensic unit, which assists the police in tracking firearms in terms of usage.
Mr. Darling says there is no longer a need for persons to come into the office for any update regarding the process of their application.
As fast as possible, applicants are told whether they are denied, deferred, or approved for a license. And further to add that persons have an opportunity to appeal if they are aggrieved by the decision of the authority in that regard.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
And to news in sports, Jamaican Shanice Porter produced a season's best to take second in the women's long jump event at the second staging of the American Track League indoor meet in North Carolina on Sunday. Porter, who ended 8th at the 2019 World Outdoor Championships in Doha, caught the sand at 6.52 meters on her second and fourth attempts. The 2011 World Under-18 long jump champion ended behind American Kendall Williams, who won with a mark of 6.60 meters. Meanwhile, the other Jamaican to compete on Sunday, 2010 Youth Olympics 100-meter champion Odin Skeen, failed to make the men's 60-meter dash final. Skeen ended 5th in Heat 1 with a time of 6.83 seconds, which was not good enough to make the final. Former Jamaican athlete Jack Harvey, now Jack Ali Harvey, competing for Turkey, was 4th in Heat 1 with a time of 6.82 seconds. Heat 1 winner Marvin Bracey of the United States went on to take the overall event in 6.63 seconds. And that's the midday news. I'm Anthony Lugg. Join us at 7 for primetime news. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.